Sushila and I want to thank Sanjay Roy, Suraj Dhingra and the JLF team for bringing the Jaipur Literary Festival to Houston. We are happy to see that again this year, the Council General of India, India House Houston, IACCGS and the Asia Society have partnered with JLF Houston. Houston has a lot to offer when it comes to multicultural programs. In a city where nearly 90 different languages are spoken and nearly 1/4 of all residents were born outside the US, Houston is one of the most diverse places in the nation. For over a decade, the Jaipur Literature Festival has stood for diversity of ideas, languages, nationalities, and subjects. The festival believes for the dialogue to be meaningful, we must have representation of all points of view. The festival helps us discover what we have in common and concentrate on how similar we are rather than how different we are. We look forward to seeing the community interact and continue to grow in a face-to-face meeting. Yes, face-to-face meeting in Houston next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Durga Agarwal and Sushila Agarwal, our advisors to JLF Houston. Thank you very much for opening this session today. Welcome back. Teamwork Arts in association with Asia Society Texas Center and Imprint welcome you to this session of JLF Houston's virtual festival. Myth and Modernity, Amish and Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni in conversation with Vayu Naidu. Myth is the story that cannot be confined or constricted by time and place. The burgeoning myths that are being told and retold around the world have origins dating back thousands of years, stretching their limbs into the current time as their relevance is estimated and assessed. The speakers in this session are admirably poised to assess the cultural impact of myths in the current global setting. Amish, currently director of the Nehru Center in London, is the best-selling author of the Shiva Trilogy, Rama Trilogy, and more recently, Legend of Suheldev. Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni's best-selling work includes Mistress of Spices, Palace of Illusions, and Forest of Enchantment. In conversation with author and performance storyteller Vayu Naidu, the session will examine the interplay of modernity and ancient myth. Amish is a diplomat, author, and columnist. He's taken over as the director of the Nehru Center in London in October 2019. In 2014, Amish published his first book in 2010 and has written 8 books till date. His books have sold 5.5 million copies and have been translated into 10 Indian and 9 international languages. Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni is American Book Award winner. She's the best-selling author of 18 books, including Mistress of Spices, Sister of My Heart, Before We Visit the Goddess, Palace of Illusions, and Forest of Enchantments, including her latest offering, which has just come out. Her work has appeared in over 100 magazines and anthologies and has been translated into 29 languages and made into films. Vayu Naidu is a Royal Literary Fund Fellow at Royal Holloway University of London. History Humanities 2019 to 2021. She is also Research Associate at SOAS and is continuing her work with Mulosagi and the Being Human Project. She was the first storyteller transposing the Ramayana and the Mahabharata in English with Western orchestras and museums and arts education for a multicultural society, commissioned by Arts Council of England. Her novels are Sita's Ascent, which was nominated for the Commonwealth Book Award, The Sari of Surya Vilas, which was featured on ABC as Australia's Book of the Week. Her short story is titled A Madurai Mystery of Victoriana. This conversation will be followed by a Q&A, so please do feel free to send in your questions and Vayu will pose these of our speakers today. Remember, all our sessions are available to view on Facebook page and YouTube channel, and stay tuned to the jlflitfest.org/Houston for the full schedule and information about our speakers. One final thing, in these really unusually difficult times, we have struggled to bring you JLF Houston without charging a registration fee. In fact, we've struggled to hang in there by the skin of our teeth, even as we speak. Please do donate as generously as you can to continue to ensure a free, seamless, and continuous flow of knowledge and information. As we all know, it's really knowledge and information that can push back on the hatred narrative of our time and on false news. You can donate to us on our website, jlflitfest.org/Houston. Ladies and gentlemen, Myth and Modernity, Amish and Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni in conversation with Vayu Naidu. Vayu, over to you.
Thank you, Sanjay, and welcome to everyone. It's a perfect evening, a bleak winter evening, midwinter in London, and a big hello to Chitra in Houston and audiences all over the world. And Amish, I'm taking as my compatriot in London, but he's also returned from India. So he's got his, he's sort of three zones within his one body right now. So I'm so delighted and excited by the title of this conversation we're going to have with you, Chitra, and with you, Amish. Myths and Modernity. Goodness, isn't it like living in a myth in the present moment? It's totally millennial and post-millennial, and it has titles of literature, autobiographies coming out from the publishing world. To name one, The Promised Land. Everyone's looking towards myths. And we wonder why, because in our contemporary moment, we seem to be living through something, yes, that feels like a myth. And what's important is that we're making meaning of it. By myth as a chronicle of events, we make histories. That used to be the past. But while we look back, we enable others to look ahead. We have myths, to name a few, like the Norse myths. Kvasir and his body, which is broken and butchered and becomes the golden mead, is most valued by the gods and their brutish lords. Why is that? It is also the churning of the ocean, which is a fantastic myth, whether it's that mythic moment of Aphrodite rising to give us the cognition of creativity, or the bowl of immortality from the Hindu legends. But it's something that's a mythic consciousness that runs through all of us. So between the telling and the imagining is the identification of a consciousness. And that's the kind of myth and modernity that we hope we're going to talk and share with you today. It's this returning to the understanding of the human that's manifest across time. So before we go into our writers' amazing and prolific work, I'm just going to open with a first question to really Chitra and Amish, which is, what was the first myth that acted as a catalyst for each of you to start writing, and importantly, why?
Well,
I think Chitra should go first.
Yeah, or name it.
Chitra should go first, please.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. So what I think for me was the magic moment was when my grandfather started telling me stories of the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. And this goes back so far that it's only a vague memory in terms of how old I was, but the memory itself is very clear. I was in my grandfather's house. It was summer vacation. And, at that time, he lived in the village. There were no electric lights. So he would light the hurricane lamp. And he would bring all of us cousins together and he would tell us these amazing stories. And they really went somewhere very deep into me. And I think that is the power of myth, that, it's just timeless. It's something about the human condition, Vayu, as you were saying, that creates this resonance within us. So those stories stayed within me. I didn't understand why. They were wonderful stories, but apart from the storyline, there was something deeper in them. So I kept going back to them. I read, older children's versions and then adult versions. And then I started doing research because I was especially interested in the pictures of the feminine that they created. And I felt there was something of great value in pictures that they gave us of characters such as Sita and Draupadi. So I'll pause here and we can listen to how Amish got interested into me.
Thank you for that, Chitra. And to you, Amish, who I think also brings in this wonderful, exciting, if I dare say, myth of masculinity. So if you give us the sense of what was that first myth that took it off for you, and also if you could tell us about the myth of masculinity in your work.
I think I'd heard this wonderful line somewhere, it's not mine, that no Indian hears the Ramayana for the first time. We are born with it. We're the only surviving pre-Bronze Age civilization. Every other pre-Bronze Age civilization has been wiped out. They're dead, most of them violently. We have survived. Large part of the reason, what is culture at the end of it? It's food, it's clothing, it's our interpersonal relations, but in large parts it's also the stories that we collectively believe in. And I think all of us Indians we just grow up with it, and that was true of me as well. I was in a sense lucky that I grew up in a deeply religious and rooted family. In fact, our generation is the first generation to be educated in the English language. My parents were educated in the Hindi medium. My grandfather was a Pandit in Kashi. We grew up with these stories. I still have memories of four of our siblings and various other cousins walking with Babaji hand in hand. Him carrying, we're a Shaivite family, but he was also very devout Ram Bhakt. And he would go to Tulsi Ghat with the Ramcharitmanas on weekends and just sit out there and do an Ucharan. We weren't a very well-off family, we were quite poor. But he believed that if you've been blessed with Goddess Saraswati's blessings, it's your duty to pass it on. And he used to sit on the ghat and would read 2 pages and just do an Ucharan free of cost. And then we would walk back. He'd normally buy some milk or something on the way, take back to Dadiji. These are memories one just grew up with, and because of the family background, we don't really learn anything in our education system about our culture. You know that it's still a colonial education system, but because of the family background and the depths that my grandfather on my father's side, my grandmother on my mother's side, and our parents went into, we got a much deeper understanding. So it's not just the tradition of masculinity, the tradition of the sacred feminine as well. Like I said, we're a Shaivite family. So Lord Shiva is as masculine, as anyone can imagine. But he's also the Ardhanarishwar. He treats his wife with immense respect, Goddess Parvati. And those are archetypes we're just, used to. We grow up with. And the stories kind of imbibe those values into us. I'll end here and then we'll move to the next question.
No, and thank you for sharing both those aspects of, and it's so interesting how with Chitra, it's your grandfather also telling you those tales, and yet you are plucking the insights into a feminine force within those tales. And Amish is having his father take it round, and yet you're inspired by the tale telling is that lovely myth again about Saraswati saying, if you've got this learning, then you've got to pass it on. And yet, although as we are discussing round, I should like to say, a tea table or whatever we are in now in ethereal time, yes, this is specific to our cultures. And in fact, with the three of us, there'd be three different versions of the Ramayana, which are very rooted. I know Chitra and I share both the Krittivasa and the E-Ramayanam, and of course, we share with Amish the Ramayanams up in North India as well. And yet it's this universal thread, however far-flung we are. I think everybody somehow relates to the humanity of these otherwise worshipped as gods within different cultures. And I was just wondering, I'm now sort of going to just move in another direction, and this is a question to Amish. You have this wonderful creation of the Immortal Writers Center, which in a way is also informing a new generation and a new readership. And I was wondering if you would like to just talk about what started you off with that. Like, you do come up with the genesis of the idea, people go and research it, and in a way it's almost like kind of a Gurukula thing, that people do their researches and they're also thinking about it, and then you collate the material, and then the story is effectively how you want to put it together. And what's your thinking in that, in terms of the retelling of myths? Because, it's not just the written, it's not just the product, it's the making of the product. And I know in a different way, Chitra has her students and things, but both of you have a very interesting contrasting way of how you fulfill this, dare I say, mission, but why not, or vision?
Well, and let me answer the Writers Center thing first, and then I will come to the very, very important part of the interpretations of our stories, why I believe it is so important. The Writer Centers, it's a very simple concept. It has been tried abroad. There are various authors, Wilbur Smith, James Patterson, who have tried this. It hasn't been done in India. It started only now, recently. And the idea is very simple. I have more story ideas than the capacity to write. And my biggest fear is not running out of story ideas. My biggest fear is running out of life before I finish my story ideas. I do not want to carry my story ideas to my cremation pyre. I already have some between 20 to 25 series, not books, series in my mind. And all I've managed to complete is 1.5 till now. And I write at a pace of 1.5 to 2 years per book, because my books are long. They're 450, 500 pages. They're not quick 150, 200 page books. There's a lot of research that goes into it. The historical settings, it takes time. So the Writer Center is very simple. It's hope to expand my capacity so that I can finish my stories before I die. So I have hired writers. They get a fixed pay. Even if I'm unhappy with what they've written and it gets junked, they will get their money. But I am a control freak, so I tell them the story idea. I write a 5,000, 10,000 word summary. They do the research. They write the first draft, and then I work on it. Basically, so that I'm able to bring out more books quicker. I'll have another book. I just launched a book, Legend of Suheldev, a few months back, 3 months back, and I'll be launching a non-fiction book in another 2 months. So the productivity has improved. Now, the thing on interpretations of our stories, and why I believe what Chitra is doing is so important, what I'm doing, and all of us are making a very small contribution to a culture that we love immensely. I think one of the key, I've said this often, one of the misfortunes of India is that many of our liberals have not realized that our ancient culture is actually their biggest ally. And they haven't realized it because, sadly, many of them have actually not read our ancient texts. They have read Western texts rather than ancient Indian texts. And they will find that if you read the Indian text, the concept of multiple interpretations is the most Indian thing to do. Many modern Indians believe the Lakshman Rekha is there in the Ramayana. It's not there in the Valmiki Ramayana. It is there in the Ramcharitmanas, and even in the Ramcharitmanas, it's not described the way most modern Indians perceive it to be, because in their perception, it has been built on a television serial of the 1980s, the way they see it. This is one example. There are many examples like this. And what is liberalism? At its core, it is the ability to respect different truths. That's what liberalism is. You know, in North India, where you, and I know it's true of Bengal as well. The Kritsi Bhasha Ramayana, of course, comes from there, but it's true of Bengal as well that it's believed that Lord Karthik is a bachelor. But in the south, if you go, Lord Karthik has two wives, Valliji and Senaji. Now imagine if you're a Shaivite, right? And you go to a temple in the south and you turn to your mother, but you said Lord Karthik is a bachelor. Here he is with two wives. What's going on? And what is the answer all of us will get from our mother or our father? That there are multiple truths. Learn to respect multiple truths. This is what liberalism is. We need to teach all these stories in our education system. Sadly, our education system is still colonial. We teach nothing about our own, very little about our own culture. And so then it's left to us authors to try and put these thoughts across through popular stories. And that's why I believe it is so important to keep coming out with interpretations told with respect. I mean, Chitra writes with respect, as do I. We're not we're very proud of our culture, but it's a different interpretation, and it's a very rich Indian tradition. It has been done repeatedly for millennia.
Thank you, and it's also with your widespread readership that we are offering these kind of platforms. Chitra, to you now with Forest of Enchantment, but before that also Draupadi. I'm just trying to amalgamate it, so I'm going to now work on how this principle is working in a way. What Amish, you, to a great extent myself, because I also come from that bilobial condition of being an oral tradition storyteller, so that this whole aspect of the vision or the darsana, or what Sanjaya is, not Sanjay Roy yet, but Sanjay Roy as well, and Sanjaya Uvacha. But it's that distinctive, it's vision that you see before we create. And Amish is so right in saying that, there's so much material which is open to so many multiplicity of interpretations, and we are tapping into that. And Chitra, in your writing, you're almost, the voice is almost like first person, and we enter this interior, almost poetic cadence of the narrative with your women characters. Do you want to just say how that works with the written medium in English and what you're doing with these wonderful mythic women?
Sure, I'll talk about that. But first, I wanted to just agree with Amish that interpretations, multiple interpretations, are so important. And I think this, all over the world, people recognize this about myths. That is why the stories of the myths are retold. Sometimes they're put into a modern context. Sometimes we see the mythic characters, but now they have slightly different names, and they're working out their destinies within a different world, so to speak. But in the case of Amish's writing and my writing, I think we are focused on what we imagine as the time of the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. And these are the two great epics, which I think they are well known in the West, but I really, really want them to be known all over the world, because they are very Indian, and I'm so thankful that I come from that culture, but they are world texts. Okay, myths belong to the world, and multiple interpretations of myths are so important because each age is going through a different condition, a different society. So we have to be able to apply what the myth is saying to our time to make it relevant, right? And that is why these interpretations are so important. That is why after Valmiki wrote the original Ramayana, many, many great writers felt the need to write the Ramayana? Is it because Valmiki didn't do a good job? No, he did a great job. But because we feel that the truth of our times, our everyday living, requires us to shine the light on one aspect of these myths and these epics. And for me, that has been the characters of the women. And because I wanted to make it very personal, in both Palace of Illusions, which deals with Draupadi as the main character, whom I call Panchali, and in Forest of Enchantments, where Sita is the main character, they are speaking in their own voice. And I want this voice to be a contemporary voice, even though the world of both of these books these worlds are the ancient worlds. I've imagined them in that time. But I've given the women a contemporary voice because I want those two things to kind of, clash against each other in some ways, or maybe be woven into each other. And what I want to say, I guess, to my reader is, first, I just want to invite them into the inner world of Draupadi and Sita, because I feel that that's what's been left out in a lot of the older texts. The older texts are very male-focused. They are very much from the omniscient point of view. The gods are looking down often at the world and talking about what's going on and then participating. But mine is very from the inside of the woman out into the world. So that's something that's really important for me to do, because I want today's women from all over the world, I hope, to recognize themselves in Draupadi and in Sita, and to see that the way in which these women have dealt with their problems, and they had huge challenges in their lives, challenges that are not very different from what happens to women now. If you think of, what Sita has to undergo, being abducted and then being shamed for that abduction and then being punished for it, right? All of those things, I think we continue to see it. Sita, left to bring up 2 children on her own, probably literature's first single mother. These are things that we are all struggling with, or we are all hoping to address. Sita, who at the end of her story says, no more compromising. I will not compromise. I will not do an Agni Pariksha, right? So these are things I really feel that, I don't know, they're so relevant, they resonate in me. And I wanted to create the appropriate voice so that my readers could identify and that they would resonate also.
And this is exactly where we move into that whole territory of, rather than myth and modernity, it's actually myth as modernity. And I'm going to just request you, I know we don't have too much time, but this might be a wonderful moment, Chitra, for you to tell us about Kaur, where we're moving from myth into this area of history, as with Amish's book as well, with the legend of Suheldev. But Chitra, while we were focusing on that, could you just tell us about your forthcoming book called about Jindan Kaur, and how we go into, well, a history which is very recent that you've written about?
Thank you. You're talking about my book, my forthcoming book, The Last Queen. It will be out in India in January through HarperCollins India. And I'm really looking forward to that, because I've spent a long time on my books. My books, just like Amish, a lot of research has to be done. And then an understanding of the research, like with the Ramayana and Mahabharata books, they took forever. Forest of Enchantments came out 10 years after Palace of Illusions, because I had to kind of, process the material and figure out what that material meant. So also with the story of Jindan Kaur, which I think is really not as well known as I would like. Again, look at the life of Jindan Kaur. She is the youngest queen of Maharaja Ranjit Singh, and many, many, many people know about Maharaja Ranjit Singh, who was, of course, a wonderful king, a wonderful man, an amazing and very interesting person. And many people know about her son, Dalip Singh, who was, whose kingdom was snatched away from him by the British, who was sent into exile into England. But so few people know about her, and yet she is central to their stories. She rose up from very humble beginnings as a kennel keeper's daughter to become Ranjit Singh's youngest and, I think, most beloved wife. After his death, she fought against numerous internal forces to become Queen Regent. She did some very unusual things for her time. She dispensed with the veil. She went out and talked to her army. She inspired them. And she tried very hard to keep her kingdom safe from the British, and so on. So her story goes on. And at the end of the book, she will win a victory, but it'll be a most unusual one. But so again, I wanted to bring that forgotten voice, or that to shift the spotlight onto her, where it's always been on the men around her, the men in her life, because I think Jindan is such a contemporary character. She isn't like a goody person. She has a lot of faults. She has a terrible temper. She has, she needs to be tricky sometimes and to plot against people, and she does it with great fervor. And she's just a live character, and she is, I don't know, she's just amazing.
It's great you're bringing her into an otherwise unknown pantheon of feisty women from the last century. I'm so conscious of time, and it's such an interesting discussion. But at this point, would I be able to request Amish to open with his first reading with something from the legend of Suheldev, and making time for Chitra to read something from her forthcoming book in January. Thank you.
All right. Let me read. I should have picked something out, but let me read this scene. I'll set up the scene for you. King Suheldev is essentially, he lived 1,000 years ago, right? And he was from a subaltern caste, from a small kingdom called Shravasti. And you have to remember, in those days, the Turks were the military superpower of the world. The ones we call as Delhi Sultan and Mughals, and which Bollywood has convinced us that they looked Indian and spoke Urdu. That is actually not true. They were Turks from Central Asia. To our eyes, they would have probably looked Chinese. They did not speak Urdu. Urdu is an Indian language. They would have spoken Turkic or Persian. None of us would have understood anything of what they were saying. Okay? They were foreign invaders. But they were the military superpower of the world from the 11th to the 16th century. King Suheldev, a subaltern caste Hindu, forges together an army of Hindus of all castes, of Indian Muslims, Indian Buddhists, to fight an invading Turkic army, and it's based on actual fact. He destroys them. It's such a devastating victory that no Turkic tribe comes back to India for 150 years. Truly inspiring story. This happens when an Indian Muslim follower of King Suheldev, called Abdul, risks his life to save a temple from Turkic invaders. Suheldev and his band arrive just in time to save Abdul and to save the temple. But he's angry with Abdul that he risked his life alone. He tells him that you should have actually waited for me. You should have come in to inform me. And our band would have come in time. Abdul was seriously injured. He just woke up he was unconscious. He just woke up, and this is the scene that happens. Abdul tried to rise. Suheldev gently pushed Abdul back onto the bed. Stay on your back. How long have I? Almost an entire day, said Suheldev. Is the temple safe? Asked Abdul. He's severely injured, I should remind you. Still weak from the severe beating he had received from Salik and his men the previous night. Suheldev ignored the question. He spoke firmly. Don't do this again. Abdul says, Suheldev, I know what you're trying to do. You don't need to prove anything. Don't do this again. But the The temple idols. Suheldev cut in. We will make new idols. Abdul remained silent. Suheldev continued. Our faith is our strength. But the Turks have turned our faith into our weakness. They know that we will go to any extent to protect our idols, even sacrifice our lives. And they use that as a pressure tactic to break our resolve, to defeat us easily. But listen to me, it's my faith. I know. The divine is everywhere, in the stars and the skies, in the trees, in the rivers, in the wind, in all of us. Our faith is what actually puts God Himself into an idol. If we all die, then our faith dies. If our faith dies, then who will worship the idols? Remember, new idols can always be made and pran pratishtha done on them. But if our faith dies, then it's all over. And our faith exists only in our beating hearts. So if there's a choice between saving an idol or us, I will always choose us. Abdul looked away, a soft tear rolling down his cheek. You don't understand. It was Suheldev's turn to remain silent. He let Abdul speak. Abdul's tears picked up pace. I feel guilty. I had to do something. I had to fight. You have nothing to feel guilty about. You have nothing to do with the Turks or the crimes they commit. Abdul turned back towards Suheldev. Suheldev's voice quivered slightly, his strong emotions bursting through. You're not one of them. You're one of us. Abdul's tears flowed quicker. Suheldev held Abdul's hand firmly. You're one of us. I trust you completely. I want you to fight by my side. But the aim of fighting a battle is to win, not to become a martyr. Abdul remained quiet. Remember what I told you earlier, continued Suheldev. What I learned from Baba, what I learned that day of the attack on the Ghazni envoy. No angry vengeance. We will have cold, ruthless retribution. Abdul looked at Suheldev with respect. Till now, he'd shown the prince respect only for his birth, but now he respected him for the man that he was becoming, the leader that he was becoming.
Thank you for that lovely reading. Really wonderful. I hope you can hear the claps across the waves. Thanks, Amish. I'm sort of fighting with time, but Chitra, as when we spoke, would it be possible to do that?
A short passage. I'll read a short passage. This is from a key moment in Jindan's life. This is when her husband, Maharaja Ranjit Singh, has died, and a number of his wives are going to commit sati and burn on his funeral pyre. And Jindan's best friend is also doing that. So now Jindan feels both external and internal pressure and a desire, perhaps in order to be a good wife, she should also commit sati. So she's kind of made that decision. And now she's walking back to her Haveli, where her child, who's not even 1 year old, is waiting with her maid. Walking back to my Haveli, I feel like I'm swimming through a deep, peaceful underwater cavern. Why did you take so long, Mangla, the maid? Sounds scared. The other queens returned to their chambers long ago. She sets Dalip, her little son, on the floor so that he'll crawl to me. I pick him up automatically. He kicks his feet in excitement, laughing. He has no idea of how his life has changed. I close my eyes. I'm going to join Queen Guddan as a sati, I say. You must help me. No, Mangla cries. Why should you do this terrible thing? Think of what will happen to Dalip if you die. You'll take care of him, I say. Jindan says. How? If I try to hide him somewhere without a patron to protect us, they'll find us for sure. They'll kill him before the year is out. Is that what you want for your baby? The cavern is calm, distant from all problems. No duties, no worries, no gut-twisting grief. I want to remain here. But someone keeps patting my face. A babble of baby sounds break into my refuge. I hear another voice too, gritty, gruff, displeased. The Sarkars, that's what she calls Ranjit Singh. Surely I've taught you better than to run away from problems. If it's fame you crave, instead of killing yourself, why not live in a way that people will remember? It's hard to rise up out of the cavern once you've gone deep, but the Sarkar's voice pulls at me. You must be both father and mother to our son. Didn't you promise me that? He will not let go until I take a shuddering breath, open my eyes, and find Dalip chewing my hair. His sloping forehead is his father's. His turned up nose is mine. He watches me as though there are no other faces in the world. I remember the sayings of my faith of Nanak. Some burn themselves along with their dead husbands, but if they really loved them, they would endure the pain alive. I hold Dalip hungrily, burying my face in his neck. He squeals his delight. I'll live for you, my heart. I'll protect you with the last drop of my blood. If I have to, I'll kill for you. But here's another truth that I've just discovered, crouching in the shadow of the first. One I can never say aloud because it feels like a betrayal of the Sarkar. For my own sake, too, I want to live. I've barely touched the world. There's so much out there to see and feel and taste. I'm hungry for it. I'll take the bitter and the sweet. I'll endure the pain.
Thank you very much. Beautifully read, both of you. And I think Amish and we are silently clapping, but it's reaching across the waves. Thank you both so much. And I just, in sort of folding toward questions, we have quite a few, which is lovely. I just wanted to say, yes, myths are alive. They are not a thing of the past, just as we've had our ancestors giving us Lava and Kusha, learning that song from Valmiki. And even if the subject, Rama, has not identified himself as the subject of the story they're singing about, it is for us as the future who listen and learn how important it is to engage with the depth, the width, the scale of those myths that tell us about now, about the present and here. And it's very much what Aphrodite did in that moment with the creativity cognition, as well as what Isis does in wanting to bury Osiris. She is remembering the dead. So here we go to the first question. Are we ready? I have Madhu Chaturvedi, who asks, Amish, that's a great statement. Different regions of India have different interpretations of our books. So if you are living abroad, how do you approach that dilemma?
You know, the problem usually begins if you believe that this is a dilemma that has to be solved. You know, often you find fanaticism begins with the belief that when someone says that their truth is the truth, and that if you don't believe the truth, you will burn in hell for eternity. Fanaticism usually begins from there. If you in your heart accept that there are multiple truths, that is the root of liberalism. And which is why so many, and especially rooted Indians, tend to be almost intuitive liberals. The key thing is to accept that there are multiple truths. Therefore, find the truths that appeals to you, right? So, for example, I find a lot of inspiration in the Adbhut Ramayana, which is also credited to Valmiki ji, which I used as a source for the second book of the Ramchandra series, Sita, Warrior of Mithila. And it is not for me to say that Adbhut Ramayana is the truth. No, how can I claim that? But it's my truth. It's a truth that I love and I find inspiration in. Therefore, you find your truth as well. And there's this lovely line in the Rig Veda, Ekam Sat Vipra Bhavada Vadanti. Truth is one, but the wise speak it as many. So have that as a core attitude and find the truth that appeals to you. That's all.
Thank you for that, Amish. Next question is by Ratan Bhagat, who says, calling ancient Hindu texts myth is a colonial description. should we start using a different term, as these most likely were based in some reality? Chitra, would you like to take that?
Yeah, I think the ancient term, especially for the Mahabharata that is used, is
Itihasa.
itihas.
Yeah.
Yes, itihas. So it's somewhere between modern history and myth. It is history that is maybe retold with that attitude that Amish so beautifully brought out, that there are many truths, especially as we go further and further back in time. This is true. But actually, isn't that the truth right now in the world? That there are so many interpretations of the events that are going on around us. And of course, you know, we need to make sure we have good sources, but we also need to make sure that the sources are many. So again, I think looking at it, and again, also to understand myth. Myth is, we're not saying, we're not using it in a dismissive way. We're using it exactly the opposite. We are saying the truth of something that we call, that we say is rooted in mythology, is archetypal. It really, it reflects on the human condition. It's not related to or confined to one time. So that is the way in which we should take the term mythology. But maybe Amish would like to add something to that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would say that it's the limitations of the English language. English language tends to be, see, every language has its own culture that it emerges from. English language tends to be a little judgmental. You'll notice that the male god in English is written with a capital G, but the female goddess is written with a small g. It's very clear, the culture of that language. Male god deserves respect, female goddess deserves disrespect. In Sanskrit, there is no such differentiation. The male god and the female goddess is the same term is used for them. So if one would say, when I speak in Hindi or in the Indian language, I use the Indian term itihasa or Puranik Katha or Adikavya for Ramayana. And yes, the Sanskrit terms, don't have the judgmentalism that comes with English. Sadly, we are speaking in a colonial language, English, and therefore the judgmentalism of English tends to come into our language. Maybe there's something there. Maybe we should try and market. I'd had a conversation with a few people on this one. Use the term itihasa rather than myth. The problem is, I've noticed when I use that, most people who don't know Indian words don't understand what we are saying. Myth and history has this judgmentalism associated with it, which itihasa does not. I don't know. Maybe there are some Sanskrit non-translatables and we try and propagate them. That could be a route, perhaps.
Definitely, I agree. And that's one of the reasons I like using words from my language in my books.
Yeah.
My original Bengali language, or when appropriate, maybe Sanskrit words, because they are very multifaceted. They have a lot of depth.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah, and I think we shouldn't shy away from that multilingualism, because a certain term, it can't be translated.
Can't be
and
translated.
it could get lost in translation. And
Okay.
just like Purana, it's not just something that's old. It's these multiple levels of understanding. And then there's the whole emotional intelligence aspect that comes into it. It's not just a dry chronicle of events. Now, I'm going to
Vayu, a suggestion to Sanjoy then. The subject of this should have been Itihasa and Modernity, not myth and modernity.
No, I'm going to say let's have another session on that. Okay.
For the next one,
I mustn't neglect Namaswi Munish's question, which says, I read Forest of Enchantments and really admired the end of the work. However, I'd like to ask why we do not consider the sisterhood between Sita and Urmila as important, or I should emphasize, as important as that of Ram and Lakshman, even in the retellings from the female perspective. It still feels that Forest of Enchantments focuses more on Ram and his conflict and analysis of his actions than what Sita stood for, her background as an intellectual of Mithila. So I think this is very much directed to Chitra. We have a couple more questions. I want to be able to give time for the other questioners. So if Chitra, you want to take that, and then I'll take
it very quickly. the story of Urmila is very important in the Forest of Enchantments. In fact, she has several sections, but because the story is told in Sita's voice, the present action of the story stays where Sita is. And Sita is, for the large part of the Ramayana, separated from Urmila. So, we have Sita thinking about Urmila, we have her remembering Urmila. Certainly in the early part when she's living with Urmila in Mithila, that's very much in the book, as well as Sita thinking about how Urmila and she are similar or different. But really, the focus of the Ramayana is Sita and all of the women. So Urmila gets her space, but so does Ravan's wife Mandodari, so does Surpanakha, so do other women such as Ahalya. It's kind of a chorus of women's voices behind the voice of Sita. That was the purpose with which and the spirit with which I wrote that book.
And I'd just like to very quickly add to that, because Urmila is very important, and in a way she is the silent one. But again, in our Indian literatures, the silences are very pregnant with a dialogue and a relationship. And we really need to start learning to accept that. It's also there with the African traditions of storytelling. It's the silence, the gesture, the look in the eye, all those rasas that we have. I know we may think in writing, well, what silence, you want to project that. But it's not omissions, but there is a presence in those absences. Yeah, I'm quickly moving on to the next question. Madhu Chaturvedi asks, Chitra, what led you to focus on the female characters from our epics? I'm wondering if that has possibly been answered, because I want to just give 3 more questions that are coming up. It is not to at all deny the answer to Madhu Chaturvedi, because I think it was answered. So here's a question from, I think it's Susan Duffield asks, has your understanding of Indian myths changed because of your experience with myths from other cultures? Can I give each one of you, Amish and Chitra, a sentence and a half each to answer that? Chitra, go first.
How about I answer in one sentence and Amish can have 2? So yes, the reading of other cultures, other myths certainly enriches my understanding of Indian itihasa and kavya, adi kavyas. But I think a deep, deep part of what I got from it just came from itself, from the fact that, as we were speaking earlier, they resonated in my childhood, in perhaps what is called my pre-logical state, and they went deep, deep into my heart. And I kept thinking about them later.
And completely agree with what Chitra said, and to add to it, as one has explored the traditions of ancient Egypt, of ancient Greece, of Gilgamesh, Mesopotamia, one finds, the stories are of course slightly different from our itihasa, but one finds such lovely commonalities in the philosophical approach, in the learnings, in the archetypes. So it is in a way beautiful, and I would encourage all of you, those who are Indians, explore the traditions of ancient Egypt, ancient Greece, Gilgamesh, Mesopotamia. You can learn a lot. Ancient Celts, and all those who are not Indian, explore our Indian itihasas as well. You'll find this cross pollination will really add value to you, and your understanding will be a lot deeper.
I agree completely.
Thank you, Chitra. Thank you, Amish. So really, it is about keep reading, keep listening to stories, everyone. If we didn't have our stories, we really wouldn't be here. And myths are not a thing of the past. It's the living flame within all of us. That's why Lava and Kusa were singing, and that's why Isis puts Osiris's body together again, and that's where we have the real meaning of the word remember. A dismembered body gets remembered. So world epics, world literatures, world myths, that's us. And I'm going to hand over to the great mythologist who constructs the past, the present, and possibly the future. Sanjay Roy.
I just want to say thank you so much, Vayu. You were a great moderator. We didn't get to hear as much about your work, but hopefully there will be another chance to do that.
That's true, Vayu. You were a wonderful
Very
host.
gracious of you, Amish. I wish your books brilliant luck, and I will be standing in the front of the line and the end of the line in all my mythic infinite possibilities to get a signed
Thank you.
copy.
We must catch up. We must catch up once the lockdown is over. Sanjay.
And over to
Thank
Sanjay.
you so much, Vayu. Thank you so much, Chitra. Thank you so much, Amish. Absolutely, in terms of the reinterpreting of myths of Itihasa, and we'll take you up on renaming this for the future. Translation is always so problematic. I mean, in different languages, how do you translate na ghar ka na ghat ka ya pet chhede paikhana, for example? You can't. I mean, Indian, the English cannot fathom what this means, the nuance of translation means. But that's of course, for another session. This was, as usual, fascinating, and the fact that, yes, many truths exist at the same time doesn't have to be your way or the highway. This is why myths or itihasa continues to be so contemporary in their very philosophy and their learning, and why it's so important, as you said, Amish, that this needs to be taught again and again and again. We need to root ourselves. We need to understand our cultures and our histories more, because it's only through education and knowledge that we can push back what Vayu said, hatred and ignorance that stems from it and false news. So thank you, all three of you, as usual. Absolutely brilliant conversation. Thank you, Vayu.
And thank you, Sanjay, because you are doing something wonderful through JLF, especially through this pandemic. You are keeping the conversation going. And I know, just because I'm a little involved with the organizing, how difficult that is. It's a challenging task. So thank you so much for that.
And could I just add,
you,
everyone with the gold sacks, please add the fundraising campaign to make these literature festivals possible. They are our only voice of freedom.
Thank you, Vayu. Thank you all for watching, being such a great audience. We encourage you to buy the books of our speakers. They are available through Brazos bookstore and, of course, Full Circle. And once again, we'd like to thank all our advisors, donors, and partners for their support. We hope you have enjoyed the conversation today, and we join back tomorrow at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time, 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 8 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, and 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and of course, 8:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time, to continue watching these amazing sessions that we're bringing to you from JLF Houston, and after that, JLF New York, and we conclude North America with JLF Toronto. Stay masked, stay safe, sleep well.
I would call the Jaipur Literature Festival a living library, or perhaps even a library of life. Do join us as we share the excitement of ideas and of debate and dialogue, of the adventures of science, of the joys of poetry and music, the consolations of philosophy, the sense of literature and of life.
So much about the festival in India, the scale of it, the energy of it, And I just love the fact that there is this effort to bring it to other cities in the world.
It's a variety of topics. It's meaningful. I'm just excited. I'm feeling like I've learned a lot to think about, and I appreciate JLF coming here.
Going forward, it would be a very good thing to do for the community to have this event on an annual basis.
I think that when you hear so many different voices and perspectives about the South Asian diaspora and many other issues, you learn that there's a lot of history that you're not taught every day, and I think that that's important to bring in today's world.
I was actually really surprised by the camaraderie I experienced here and the way that people at JLF, both attendees and other panelists, seem to really connect profoundly to literature and care about it.
In 2020, our live version of JLF has been laid to waste because of COVID-19. However, nothing's going to stop us from coming in the way of bringing our writers and speakers to you in Boulder, Colorado, Houston, New York, and Toronto, Canada.
Teamwork Arts, bringing India to the world and the world to India through Indian art and culture for over 30 years. One of Teamwork Arts' signature events, the Z Jaipur Literature Festival, is the world's largest free festival of its kind. With daily interactive sessions, lively debate and dialogue, and international music performances every night, it's no wonder the festival attracts over 500,000 visitors a year. The Jaipur Bookmark, an international B2B event for the publishing industry, happens during the Z Jaipur Literature Festival and sees a confluence of publishers, writers, and literary agents. Teamwork Arts, producers of the Z Jaipur Literature Festival, have taken the flavor of the festival to international shores with vibrant events in the UK, Australia, and the US. Teamwork Arts takes India's artistic diversity to the world with almost 12 festivals of India across continents in a stunning array in over 40 cities. A feast for the senses, these are spectacles of dance, music, cinema, theatre, literature, and so much more. In each of these places, Teamwork Arts' colourful festivals of India are the high points of the annual cultural calendars. Be it Confluence in Australia, India by the Bay in Hong Kong, India by the Nile in Egypt, Ion India in Chicago, Shared History in South Africa, India in the Sunshine City in Zimbabwe, Edinburgh Fringe Festival, Kala Utsavam in Singapore, Sarang in South Korea, festivals in Abu Dhabi, Shanghai, Sweden. The list is dizzying. The Jazz India Circuit is an endeavor by Teamwork Arts to spread the word and sound of jazz across the country. The 2017-18 season, 4 festivals across 3 cities featuring over 25 stellar artists from India and around the world, including Jojo Mayer and Nerve, drummer-singer Jameson Ross, and Dave Weckel, who collaborated with the talented Mohini Day. The Mahindra Kabira Festival celebrates the spirit, lyric and verse of the 15th century mystic poet Kabir in his birthplace, the historic city of Varanasi. Kabir's poetry is about inclusiveness. Mahindra Kabira brings to music lovers an unforgettable experience of listening to leading exponents of the classical Banaras Gharana and rich folk traditions of music on the legendary banks of the mighty river Ganges, along with sessions on art and literature, specially curated walks with famous local residents and delectable local cuisine. The Sacred celebrates the spiritual through music and its ability to heal. International artists collaborate with world music exponents from India amongst the most incredible desert settings on the banks of the Pushkar Lake. Heritage walks, meditation, talks and workshops are part of this weekend experience. Teamwork Art so promotes and recognizes the best of Indian theatre through the Mahindra Excellence in Theatre Awards. The Meta Week in Delhi is an enthralling showcase of the 10 best nominated plays shortlisted from numerous entries received from across the country and across languages. The Meta Lifetime Achievement Award has been presented to leading lights of India's theatre industry. For the young and the young at heart, the Ishara International Puppet Theatre Festival brings local and international performances to audiences across several Indian cities. While the Multi-City Kahani Festival features interactive storytelling sessions and workshops championing the power of imagination. Bollywood Love Story, a musical. Our international touring productions such as Bollywood Extravaganza and Flamenco India have sold out shows across Europe, Egypt, Russia and Spain. Expressions International Contemporary Dance Festival showcases Indian and international productions, bringing together several dance genres for Indian audiences. Teamwork Arts, celebrating the arts. For more information, visit www.teamworkarts.com.
You know, I don't think we really create community so much as provide a space for community to evolve. What Imprint does is offer a space where you can easily integrate reading and literature and writing into your everyday life.
For 38 seasons, we've presented nearly 400 of the great writers, winners of every major award from 35 countries, an inclusive array of voices and styles in a series accessible to all. Thank you for accompanying us on the journey.
I'm glad to be here to celebrate with you the wonder of a big room full of people who love books.
To have a truly just and equal society, at least when it comes to storytelling and representation, means that we have many, many voices from many, many different experiences.
I really enjoy reading out loud. I really enjoy being read to. It's a bit of a parenthesis in our very hectic, fast, noisy, everyday.
When I was growing up, you were a black kid, there were two stereotypes about you. You were going to be the coolest kid in the room, or the toughest kid in the room. But the truth is, we're also weirdos. We get to be weirdos too. It's important that you know that everybody deserves the opportunity to be as strange and weird as they want to be.
They're reading on their own. They're starting to value what a book means to them. And so to then meet the author, ask questions, get a book signed by the author, it can be a really inspiring thing for a kid that age.
This is my path, but I want to make sure that the path is as wide as a highway for you. Whatever your dream is, your dreams can come true. Because I know they came true for me.
Hey.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Like a poem?
Yes.
Yeah, what do you want a poem about?
Daylight savings.
And what's your name?
Well, the in-print poetry buskers were created to take poetry out into the streets via poets armed with typewriters, writing poems by request on whatever topic people would dream up. It's great for the poets. They get to exercise their chops, but it also is a miracle for the recipient of these poems. A poem that's written for them is the first time that's ever happened to them.
The sky was big and pink this morning, the first morning of a new part of the year, when we all woke up earlier than we used to.
How do we balance both the writing that we do with all the other things we focus in on as well?
You have to find the rhythm that works for you. I always feel like people want like the magic recipe for how to make this work.
Empowering people to tell their stories is at ground zero what we're all about.
Her dad was our only sibling of 4 ever to get divorced.
I'm the workshop leader, facilitator of the Finnegan Park Creative Writing Group. We meet once a week and we get together and we write. They just have so much experience and so much storytelling instinct already that it's not coming in and trying to explain the basics of story. It's really just finding avenues for them to tell their stories.
My job is to educate minority communities about cancer prevention. Writing has helped me not only be just a better writer, but also a better communicator.
I was a dental officer in the Army. As a veteran, I realized that it was really important to start to process a lot of experiences that I had. And writing has been a very healthy way for me to be able to reconnect with memory and experiencing my humanity.
Because of the way the carceral system works, they have, for their own survival, been forced into a worldview that's very black and white. One of the goals of this class is to present sort of another option for them, and that there are gray areas, and there is nuance, and there is complexity, and there's not always a right and a wrong answer. And I think a poetry class gives them an opportunity to be correct in whatever choices they make.
When I first came to Houston, it was very stressful financially. Obviously, moving costs a ton of money. I didn't know that Imprint was giving us money. And they said, oh, we have a check for you. And I said, no, you've got the wrong person. I didn't win anything. And they said, you're Caitlin Weiss, right? And I said, yeah. And they said, the check is for you. It just was an unbelievable gift to me. Like someone was saying, I believe in you and your art. I'm glad you came here. Let me help you stay.
If people are empowered to tell their stories, somehow they have control of the narrative and they can change their lives and maybe make the city a better place too. I know that's ridiculously idealistic, but I like it.
Hello everyone and welcome to Kahani Online, where you discover the magic of storytelling in all its forms.
Very special guest with a very special story.
Please welcome actor and author Soha Ali Khan.
The story that I've chosen is called Someday. Here it is. And it's by Alison McGee and Peter H. Reynolds. It's a story that I've read many times to Inaya.
Everyone, grab a pencil, eraser and a notebook, as we are about to learn how to write short stories.
That's very simple. All you have to remember is 5 points.
Grumpy, we have a special story for you that dates back to the year 1962. Major Shaitan Singh Bhatti and his soldiers.
चीन ने भारत पर हमला बोला था। ये लड़ाई पूरा 1 महीना चली थी।
Our storyteller today is Katrina Zail, all the way from Lithuania in
Europe.
Yes, in Europe. And she's going to tell us about some strange and fascinating mythological creatures.
Today I will introduce you all to Lithuanian mythology. I will show you our modern world full of hidden mythical creatures.
I will narrate to you an episode from one of our oldest epics, the Ramayana.
We'll be waiting to hear from you. Until next time, bye-bye!